The MotoGP engines fell silent as Valentino Rossi dropped a bombshell claiming Marc Marquez had a shocking plan to destroy him. The revelation wasn't just past rivalry, it reignited MotoGP's most dangerous war, threatening to explode again. Rossi's revelation came like a thunderclap. In a recent sit-down interview, he didn't mince words. Marc Marquez, he claimed, had a deliberate plan during their rivalry years. It was an agenda not just to win races, but to break Rossi down mentally, corner by corner. He hinted that it wasn't coincidence that Marquez had been calculating, targeting moments where Rossi was most vulnerable, turning every battle into a psychological war. The statement wasn't dropped in the casual conversation like we're used to. It surfaced during a filmed Q&A at a MotoGP Legends event, where the crowd expected nostalgia, not controversy. When the words landed, stunned silence followed where whispers filled the room. Reporters scrambled, headlines lit up instantly, and social media exploded with debates. Was Rossi finally voicing what fans long suspected, or is this bitterness resurfacing years later? Within the paddock, the reaction was split. Some insiders nodded knowingly, recalling tense seasons filled with suspicious clashes. Others rolled their eyes, dismissing Rossi's words as stirring old fires, but nobody ignored it. Even retired riders and team bosses chimed in, fueling the blaze. Rossi hadn't just accused Marquez of racing hard, but of orchestrating destruction. If you thought this was speed, you'd be wrong, because Rossi suggested it was a calculated chess match.
Would you like to make peace with him?
According to Rossi, Marquez's plan unfolded on multiple fronts. On the track, it wasn't just about passing, it was about passing where it hurt most. Aggressive lunges into Rossi's preferred corners, shadowing him lap after lap to drain focus, then striking when fatigue set in. Rossi framed these tactics not as racing instinct, but as deliberate psychological warfare, practically aimed to frustrate, destabilize, and force errors. And off the track, Rossi alleged it went deeper. Whispered alliances in the paddock, subtle positioning in media narratives, and public statements that seemed designed to undermine his authority as MotoGP's elder statesman. Every maneuver, Rossi implied, painting him as outdated while Marquez grew stronger. Calling it an attempt to destroy wasn't hyperbole in Rossi's view. It was the way Marquez sought to dismantle not just his results, but his legacy. The rivalry wasn't a clash of bikes, it was a clash of empires. Fans listening were divided. Some saw cunning brilliance, others a ruthless campaign. But either way, Rossi's claim suggested intention, not accident. And this wasn't paranoia speaking, as the evidence began to pile up. For history just as a way of resurfacing when rivalries refused to stay buried.
6 years old, 9 times world champion, chasing his 9th.
The clearest piece of evidence Rossi's claim summoned was the infamous Sepang clash of 2015. Fans remember it like a scar, with Marquez and Rossi tangling mid-corner, accusations flying that Marquez deliberately provoked him into losing control. Penalties, outrage, and a fractured paddock left wounds that never fully healed. But Rossi's revelation relit those memories with new intensity. Suddenly, old moments began to feel like puzzle pieces. Barcelona 2016, when Marquez and Rossi nearly collided in a high-stakes battle. Assen, where Rossi accused Marquez of reckless aggression after running wide through the chicane. Even minor skirmishes, once brushed off as racing incidents, were re-examined through his lens of a long game of destruction. To Rossi supporters, these flashbacks confirmed the pattern. Marquez wasn't just racing him, he was systematically dismantling his authority. To others, it was just part of the sport's brutal reality. Two gladiators refusing to yield. Either way, Rossi's claim forced everyone to re-watch those clips, not as isolated fireworks, but as part of a darker, calculated campaign.
For me, it's nice, and of course, if it's no problem, for me, no problem to shake hands.
When confronted with Rossi's accusations in the past, Marquez's playbook has been unpredictable. Sometimes he's gone defensive, stressing that he only races to win and has no interest in politics. Other times, he's laughed off claims of manipulation, framing Rossi's words as pure theatrics. But often, silence has been his sharpest weapon. By not engaging, Marquez forces the paddock, the press, and the fans to fill the void with speculation. Silence, after all, can feel louder than any denial. When the cameras catch him smirking instead of speaking, it feeds both narratives at once. To his critics, it's the smug grin of a man with nothing to hide. To his supporters, it's the confidence of a rider above the noise. The media thrives on this tension. Headlines echo Rossi's explosive words, replaying Sepang, Assen, Barcelona in endless loops, while Marquez's lack of direct rebuttal becomes the story itself. Every shrug, every half-answer, every refusal to bite adds oxygen to the feud. And as the story spread, fans split into furious camps. Because old wounds just don't heal, they resurface when the pressure reaches breaking point. The reaction was instant. Rossi's loyalists erupted, convinced that this was final proof that Marquez had always played dirtier than the record books showed. On fan forums, the words Sepang 2015 surged back to the top, dissected frame by frame as if it had happened yesterday. For them, Rossi's revelation wasn't just a statement, it was vindication. On the other side, Marquez defenders stood their ground. They argued Rossi was stoking old flames to stay relevant, that Marquez's aggressiveness was simply the style of a racer who pushed boundaries harder than everyone else. The heated split spilled beyond fans. Pundits, journalists, and former riders couldn't resist weighing in. Some called Rossi brave for saying what many whispered. Others accused him of twisting history to settle old scores. Suddenly, a feud thought buried was everywhere again. Talk shows, MotoGP podcasts, and highlight reels, replaying the chaos. The Rossi-Marquez divide wasn't just alive, it was reignited, roaring as if no time had passed. But this revelation also raises an unsettling question for MotoGP's future. Speculatively, Rossi's revelation doesn't just reopen an old wound, it reframes one of MotoGP's fiercest rivalries. For years, fans have debated whether the Rossi-Marquez saga was raw competition or something darker. Now, with Rossi hinting at deliberate tactics, the narrative shifts. Instead of a rivalry frozen in 2015, it becomes an ongoing story that still shapes how both men are judged. For Rossi, his claim could solidify the idea that he was the sport's ultimate underdog in his later years, still battling not only the next generation's talent, but also their politics. For Marquez, however, it risks painting his legacy as ruthless calculation rather than pure brilliance. Speculation swirls. What happens if they share a stage again, whether at a MotoGP event, a documentary, or even in the paddock? Could sparks fly, even with Rossi retired and Marquez still carving his comeback? What's clear is that this feud still casts a shadow. It isn't just about who won races, it's about the identity of MotoGP itself.